You ever notice when something becomes rote? Like truly rote and known? Mundane, milquetoast even possibly. Flavorless or certainly less bold and defined? When the thing in question becomes a question like, what else? What now? When the everything just feels kinda mid. Where do you go with that? Abandonment? I mean, probably not, I hope not. Pizza is pizza after all, even when it sucks, but it certainly doesn't mean you or I won't stop eating it. Change, then, force the delta by usually extreme measures or parameters. Shock the thing back to life again. Surely that will revive the rote, add color again. Surely that will work. But what if change simply fragments the thing, shards the view like a broken mirror? Well, that's change in a way, I guess, but it's not exactly different enough to suggest a clear push away from the already thing, the thing we know, the rote thing. A paradigm is usually what we call this, at least the term I'm going to use anyway. A distinct and known pattern across a system. And the rote is opposed to the paradigm, not necessarily in definition, but I think in function. Something is rote because the paradigm is stale, fully understood, and easily represented. So easily, in fact, a neophyte, a newbie, as it were, could operate in this, could extract or impart in this system. Little Billy over there with his churlish smile and ill-fitting muck boots could comprehend inherently whatever the fuck the road system is, be it a network of roads or food delivery or, something even more abstract like the hero's journey and what it means in Marvel movies. Or perhaps more likely and more germane to this video, the expectations of all the different games his home console or PC could play. What is an RPG versus an FPS versus an auto battler versus a side scroller, and so on. Little Billy over there may or may not be able to, eloquate or verbalize such an understanding of all the nuances that go into those kinds of games or genres, but damn well he and I and you could intuit each and every one of those and figure it out, thus figure out what he and you and I prefer. And preference is the first node in the rote topology. The thing you like, the thing Billy likes, needs to expand and replicate, needs to breed. That was a great game, he says. I think I love that game, you say. Let me find more games in that genre, I say. And thus preference is born. Nothing groundbreaking there, but it informs why I'm making this video, this short little thing. Because preference sort of dictates what you consume. It also dictates who produces those things that are then consumed. Again, nothing too crazy of an idea here, simply straightforward economics, but sometimes this preferential system, this paradigm, becomes less of an expansion and more recursive, more about harvesting the potential of one aspect of one thing until it's fully exhausted. This is where I think the art form and the greater expanse of the medium of video games are right now. They are stuck, to use a pejorative term, but I think video games are more in a holding pattern, to use a kinder term. The last great shift in the video game paradigm and how we as humans interact with the media and consume the medium and regard the medium en masse was the full shift towards 3D from 2D, from sprites to models, as it were. 3D games arguably had existed since the late 70s, or some might say the late 80s, or early 90s, or mid 90s, but I'd say whatever the particular game or year or decade doesn't matter. It's the expectation of the video game zeitgeist or the paradigm as a whole that matters most. Whenever we as consumers expected fully 3D immersive worlds or games or systems as the norm, as the baseline, that's when I'd argue the paradigm shift occurred. And since then, be it late 80s, mid 90s, whatever, the industry, the art form, the paradigm has been basically recursive. And maybe that's too harsh of a word. I don't mean it in a negative sense. In fact, I think it's inevitable and impossible to avoid. It's just the way things progress or evolve over time, how anything pupates, I guess. Video games need to evolve. They need to and will eventually shift into a new paradigm. I believe, as so far as we understand technology, the universe, ourselves, whatever, as of right now, that paradigm is full dive VR, full immersion virtual reality. Until that migration happens, video games will simply be iterative and immodal. I figure it's a lot like the Achilles paradox, I think, or the arrow paradox, or the dichotomy paradox, or Xenos' paradox, whatever you like, which attempts to suggest that a moving object is actually at rest, because in fact it will never reach its intended destination. That motion itself is an illusion. The paradox goes like this. To get from one point to another, one must first move at least halfway, then go the remaining amount. Seems simple enough, right? But that logic also suggests that to move that first halfway amount, you must then move halfway of that remaining amount, and so forth and so on into infinity, thus never reaching the endpoint. And if nothing is actually moving, as nothing reaches a destination, then how does anything progress at all? Hence the paradox. Video games nowadays, to me, often embody this feeling. It's a new spin on an old genre, in a new way with the same old control scheme, in a new aesthetic, in a deprecated graphic style, etc., etc. Or it's just a better version of what came before, but essentially the same thing, a point X version, as it were. And make no mistake, this is not bad. I am not suggesting this is bad or in any way pejorative. In fact, as I said, I think this is unavoidable and perhaps required for any evolution of a system or paradigm or whatever. But it's still happening, the infinite half movement, the iteration upon smaller iteration. And the only thing that can add motion back into the system is a paradigm shift, I think, is the totally new or novel way in which we humans consume or represent or interact with video games. Maybe this realization, this truth, or this, as some might say in response, bullshit, can be applied across a multitude of different human endeavors, systems, whatever. But I don't know much about those other things. I mostly just write music and words and play video games, so I can only pontificate and not authoritate. I'm just a dude talking through wires to other dudes, so absolutely feel free to shit all over this. And nor am I suggesting a path to this paradigm shift. All I'm trying to really do is elucidate a smelly, stingy feeling in the back of my head that I've had for quite some time now, and I'm just trying to figure it out loud, probably just like the rest of you. And so if that's the state video games are in now, I'll argue anyway, and maybe the true next paradigm shift will be full dive VR, fully immersive VR, which directly inputs to a user's brain, then what exactly is full dive VR, true virtual reality? Why the hell would we even want this next thing as the big next thing, the next shift? First, we need the proof of concept. And maybe that could be argued as the thing happening now with companies or endeavors like Neuralink, Kernel, Melton MMI, among various others, which would prove that the human brain can be compatible with an electronic interface, that the network of the brain and thought could also be quantized and translated via a computer system and language. Simple, right? Yeah, but that's the first step, I'd imagine. That's the foundation it all rests upon. Then, after we could prove that thought, and by extension perhaps consciousness, Jesus Christ, really getting into the weeds here, could be allocated somewhere else, or at the very least, whatever the brain processes as reality can be subnetted into some other reality, i.e. transmogrifying tactile, real-world information into something else, or generating that something else wholesale. That would be the next logical step in full dive VR. Then comes the actual work for game makers, for artists, for programmers. Now that functionally these basically sci-fi technologies exist, we need to figure out how to make games for these systems. I mean, a deck of cards is just some paper, more or less, with writing on it. We have thousands of games with those. Monopoly is a little more involved, but pretty much the same thing now with small sculptures and dice. Then there's video games. Electronic representations of yes-no algorithms displayed in various 2D formats. We understand these because we make them daily, even. It's a known known. It's a fact, Jack. Full dive VR is a known unknown. We just have way more questions than answers, currently. And more abstractly, what does building an entire world even mean? Do we simply replicate a slice of reality and then tweak from there? Can we just make shit up, go full-on Salvador Dali? Could the brain even handle that? What are the ethics behind replicating something so finely it's basically duplicated? Say what AI is doing nowadays with voices and some art, or what essentially will become the holodeck from Star Trek. If I represent a person, living or dead, and then manipulate that person, benignly or not, is it real? Did I actually do that thing? It's technically a fabrication made or designed by a machine language, but because it's so intermeshed with the brain, the reality interface as it were, who is to say what is real versus not? What is processed information versus quote-unquote actual information? It's just stimuli at the end of the day, right? I mean, I don't know, it's all just too heady for me really. Still, that doesn't stop the fact that these questions or concerns or realities will occur whenever this technology can be implemented. We will be living in a true ghost in the shell world, I guess. But maybe that's kind of getting beyond the scope of this video. I really just wanted to express the idea that video games as a whole, as an art form, to me anyway, are in a cocoon state, I think. Like the butterfly, one day video games will emerge fully formed into their apex form, the true virtual infinite reality. But, just as a quick aside, even though now, in 2024, it's an explosive thought, a reality warping idea and concept that true full dive VR could create a world so real it's indistinguishable from analog reality, but for people in the 2300s, like exactly in Star Trek, it's rote, it's mundane, it's expected, and absolutely just a part of daily life. Ethics about the holodeck, at least in the show, are rarely discussed or concerned with, and everyone on the starships, in the space stations, wherever, just load a program and enjoy themselves. Sometimes the program is violent or sexual, but most times it's just an escape, just a bit of fun, or a way to better understand or diagnose something. To put simply, they don't give a fuck. I mean, it could be argued that's kinda us right now. For example, we play Red Dead 2, right? Lasso a random dude and throw him off over a cliff and laugh, because it's fun to see the ragdoll physics. Then, a few hours later, we moralize deeply about a certain character and their decisions, cry with them, feel their pain. The gamut of human morality is already understood and seen in 2024 gaming. We can study this now, not 300 years from now. Millions of hours and millions of gamers and games can attest to this in all kinds of ways. So as an aside, to assuage that dark inkling I think is always brought up when considering full dive VR or full immersion VR or fuck even AI, I don't think humanity will lose itself, nor will it misrepresent itself. We will not become slaves to a fake world or whatever, as evidenced by today, by how humans always incorporate technologies it creates. It becomes a part of us. Our cultures, our daily life, it's taken for granted, and then it becomes mundane. And then it becomes rote. And then there's that thesis again. If something is rote, I'd argue, it means that something needs to evolve, that the paradigm needs to shift. And what the fuck does that mean when it comes to representing reality in a one-to-one fashion? Where do you go from there? That's like trying to visualize a fourth spatial dimension. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what comes after that. What's more real than real? Bro, I didn't even like writing that sentence, let alone know the answer to it. Make no mistake, though, I think, as long as we don't blow each other up, Lil Billy over there will eventually have a space shootout with Beethoven and Ronald McDonald as big-tittied anime waifus drop their panty bombs across the landscape of a World War II battle transposed onto some random silvery blue moon. And the crazier part is, it will be one of the greatest written, most moving stories ever made, and we will better understand ourselves and our place in the universe because of it. And then it will become boring. It will become simple and boring and rote. The thing that would make our collective dicks hard right now and our beans mean right now will be fucking lame, dude. Like, so lame. You know it's true, as everything always does to someone somewhere. As much as full dive VR tantalizes, I think it's as equally interesting to think about what comes after. What the hell kind of world is that, you know? So, to wrap up this short little video essay, diatribe, shower thought thing, whatever the fuck, video games, I think, are rote now. They are uber iterative, and I think that's fine. It's all for the glory of the evolution that's to come, after all. It's all just another brick in the wall, a stone for the road. As much as it might seem conceptually frustrating that the next big leap hasn't occurred, I mean, what really is going to be the difference between a PS5 and a PS8? It will nevertheless occur one day. As much as I would like a new RPG to come out and blow my tits away with every novel concept and system under the sun, transform my life to its core, it simply won't happen. It's a known after all. It will only reshape the clay, not transmute it. But that's not a bad thing. When Elden Ring 2 comes out, I will no life the fuck out of that and enjoy every goddamn minute, as is required. PoE 2, another 5k hours, easy. Civ 9, let's go, one more game, who needs a job anyway? It doesn't matter that it's iterative if the goal is to enjoy myself. That aspect will never dissipate. By the definition of what a game is, it can't. Video games may be in a holding pattern as a concept, I'm arguing, as an absolute value proposition, but by no way does that mean that they're in any way less effective or more deficient. If anything, video games are actively attempting to close that gap. Video games are actively attempting to cover the half distance like the arrow of Achilles. I just really hope they reach their destination when I'm alive. Because I don't know about you, but I want to have a space war with Ronald McDonald and big tittied anime waifus. I want to invest myself in a world that is indistinguishable from my own, and one that could hopefully make me better understand myself or the world at large. And, mostly, I just want to have some damn good fun. So, what do y'all think? Are video games gestating as a whole? Are we on the precipice of greatness and a true paradigm shift? Or do you think that shift will never happen? Do you think it's all just a bunch of horse shit? Is it even physically possible, or will we just always be peering over the fence, never playing in the yard? A video game shower thought for y'all. Anyway, thanks for watching. Peace.